Hello, this is Ian, and this is Ian's POV. Now, yesterday over the news channels, they were talking about the government censoring social media and reporters during an election. Well, if elections are going to be free and fair, why would they want to control it? It means that the only outlets that could report on an election would be the authorised media. BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5. And they're thinking of censoring. It's people like Tousi TV, Mike Graham, now on in the mornings. He's doing brilliantly, mind. He regularly gets around about 14,000, which is the highest rated morning news podcast in the country. Talk gets about 4,000 or 5,000 in a morning. But Mike Graham's at 14,000 plus. You know, why would he want to be censored? Why would they want to censor him? Because he's not part of the mainstream media. He's not controlled by the mainstream media. What they do, you see, to control the media, they use something called Ofcom. And to be a television station, Channel 4, Channel 5, BBC, you need to have an Ofcom licence. So you apply and you've got the rules then. You've got the rules of Ofcom so they can control you. If you do something wrong, they fine you. That's a contract. Now, these, like me, I can say what I like here. I can't tell lies and I can't say anything defamatory. But I can think for myself. I can have my own point of view. But they don't like that. Because I have a different point of view than the tyranny of the Labour government. And the mainstream media, mostly. I am not controlled by anybody. But what they're trying to do is that the Labour government have given Ofcom the right to govern, control the social media. Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Now, I keep talking about freedom of speech and debate. Article 9, Bill of Rights. We have that right in law. And I think I'm right. My interpretation of the Bill of Rights of 1688 gives us all the right of free speech. It's what the newspapers use. When they take the newspapers to court, they cry free speech, and it goes directly to the Supreme Court. It would have been the House of Lords, but since Tony Blair put the law lords in the Supreme Court, it goes to the Supreme Court, which now sits as the law lords. That's why the newspapers go directly there, because of this section of the Bill of Rights of 1688. Now, if you read it more carefully, it says freedom of speech and debate or proceedings in Parliament cannot be questioned in any place or court outside of Parliament. Well, as the Supreme Court is the law lords, that is part of the House of Lords now. So any newspaper that screams free speech, they should be going to the Supreme Court. to get a judgment. But oh no, the tyranny of the government uses other methods. They say that what you're saying is hate speech. And they use this non-crime hate incident thing to get the police to investigate you. That's to intimidate you. If it's a non-crime, they can't arrest you, because they can't arrest you for a non-crime. So it's a way that the police can intimidate you. So if you say something they don't like, it's a non-crime hate incident. They've stopped that now. They say the police aren't going to investigate that anymore. And I haven't heard any of that lately. But what they're doing now is using hate crime. The other thing they're tagging on to social media sites is malicious communications. Well, malicious communications needs to be harassing somebody by email or social media or video constantly. Now, you can't just do it by doing one post or one email. By constantly badgering somebody. Malicious has to be malicious. But oh no, if somebody says they're offended, they're using GBQQ plus activists, the gay pride lot. They complain. They say they're offended by what somebody said. This is what happened to me. A guy who's openly a gay activist told the police that they were offended from what I said. I later found out he was a sock puppet. I had somebody come to my house, came into the workshop, had a cup of coffee, and we sat down. And what they told me was unbelievable. I can't tell you where. All he said was the guy that complained is a fake name. It's a sock puppet. What am I supposed to do? So I told the police officer that. So from being a non-crime incident to a hate crime to malicious communication for a single line on Facebook, no way was I ever going to be arrested because I was never cautioned. I later found out that I had to be cautioned before I spoke. I was never cautioned. So it was police harassment. The police were being used to harass me to try and shut me down. Now, this is happening to other people as well. It's not only me. I'm just a small fish in a big pond. There's bigger fish than me. And this is what they will do. And this idea of censorship and using Ofcom will be used against people who have a different point of view than the government and the mainstream media. That is not free speech. That is stifling free speech. That is why this is Ian's POV. Ian's point of view, my point of view. Because I have free speech. I have free speech under the Bill of Rights. Now, why do I keep saying this, and I will always say this. My expertise was the Firearms Act and the Wildlife and Countryside Act and how they interact with each other. When I was in the civil service, I worked with government lawyers on this. And I used to be in one section, and the wildlife section, I was on the 10th floor of Tollgate House. And on the 8th floor was the wildlife section. And they used to call me in and ask my advice. And I would tell them what I know. Or else I would go home, I'd consult my books, and I had the Wildlife and Countryside Act, the Firearms Act, and a book called Fair Game, written by 2 police officers. And it's all about what firearms law, what you can do, and trespass. and controlling pests and everything else. And it's called fair game. And I had that as well. I had the wildlife officer come into my house for some advice on firearms. What firearms could be used to kill what animals. And I got the Wildlife and Countryside Act, the Firearms Act, the Amendment Act, and the Fair Game. He said, wow, how have you got that book? I said I had it given me. I was writing for magazines at the time, and the authors were signing the books, and they gave me the book to report on it, and I did. I wrote a report on it. And it's actually signed by the author. Wow, he said, I haven't got one of those. And then he saw that I had the Guidance to the Police, the big thick book. About an inch thick it was. Guidance to the Police on Firearms Law. He said, how have you got one of those? Even I haven't got one of those. I said, HMRC, I bought it. I think it cost, in those days, I think it cost £4.50. And I would advise them on the practical implications of using the law. And I would do that with the civil service. Now, if I apply what I've learnt working with government lawyers about reading Acts of Parliament and the Bill of Rights, if you've got a clause, a section in an Act of Parliament, it says something is prohibited. It's against the law too, or words to that effect. And then it uses two little words. There's and or. And puts the two parts together. You can do this, and if you do this, that then becomes a crime. Or splits it. If you do this, or if you do that. So in the Bill of Rights, it says freedom of speech and debate, or proceedings in Parliament. So that splits it into two parts. So we all have freedom of speech and debate. That's for so that you can go to open public meetings and you've got the right of free speech. And you can debate for councils, for the courts, and proceedings in Parliament. So Parliament has the right of free speech. MPs use it to name people, and they say they got parliamentary privilege. And over the years, that's been forgotten. And what they do is they say, oh, that's only for MPs. But if you read the Bill of Rights, it says or. So it's freedom of speech and debate or proceedings in Parliament, which splits it into two halves. So we all have the right of freedom of speech and debate under the law, under the Bill of Rights, 1688. Let's get that right. That's what it is. That's the law. And I was in the union in the civil service. I did 6 years and I did four years as a union rep. And I discussed this with the government lawyers. We were sat round having coffee and having a chat about law, what it meant and what you can do and what you can't do. And I posed this as a question. Oh, they said that's only for MPs. So I explained my findings, how I've seen it using my interpretation of the Firearms Act and the Countryside and Wildlife Act. The two lawyers looked at each other. And one said, bloody hell, he's right. And that was discussion over. You know. And I still think I'm right. Nobody has explained if I am wrong. But they don't want you to know this. So I don't believe that Ofcom can rule on what you can say on social media without going to the High Court to prove that you were wrong. If it's malicious communications or hate crime or, defamatory language or whatever. Ofcom would have to take you to the Supreme Court because it's freedom of speech. The same as they take newspapers to the Supreme Court. But then if you're talking about somebody, then the somebody, whoever it is, becomes a civil matter, and they would have to take you to the Supreme Court, the same as they take a newspaper to court because they don't like an article that's been written on them. The newspaper will say, we've got the evidence, it's free speech, and it goes to court and the court sorts it out. Ofcom have not got the right to rule on that under the Bill of Rights of 1688. Full stop. That's it. So the idea that the government can control social media and censor free speech is out the window. But they're trying to bypass the law that we've already got. They won't tell you that you've got this right. They won't tell you you've got the right of free speech. Oh, it's a common law right. Well, how do you prove a common law right? Because it's written in law. It's written in an Act of Parliament. So the government has got no right to censor social media. If someone's being defamatory, if they're promoting violence, fair enough. But Ofcom haven't got the right to do it. They got to go through the High Court because all the person saying is going to say this is free speech. And if it's free speech, they got to go to the Supreme Court. Now, a lot of people won't be able to go to the Supreme Court. So they'll say, I haven't got the money. Going to cost me at least £20,000 to get a lawyer for a day. So most people will not be able to go to court. So that's another way they do it. It's by denying your rights. One of the old Acts of Parliament I read said, we will not deny or defer justice or right. That is in an Act of Parliament. We will not deny or defer justice or right. And if they're putting a financial burden on you, then that's denying your right. But if you're an illegal immigrant, they use legal aid to pay for your defence, to pay for your lawyer. So you with no money have got government aid because you're illegal. Me, because I got a point of view that the government don't like, could take me to court, or not even bother to take me to court because I haven't got the money to fight them. Do you see how this works? Who's going to stand up for the ordinary guy on the street who's got a point of view that uses TikTok, social media or Instagram to fight the tyranny of a government? Let that sink in. Anyway, it's Ian. It's my point of view. Bye-bye for now.